I just, again, want to thank you all for joining us today, and I'd like to thank our wonderful presenter, Dr. Kristen Horan, who will take us through the material today. Kristen?
Thank you, Meg, and welcome everyone. I just want to say thank you for taking time out of your day to attend this webinar on employee wellness during COVID-19. Before I get started, I just want to introduce my colleague, Dr. Lauren Neef. We worked on this presentation together, and she will be joining us for the question and discussion portion of the WebEx. So I think the main point that I want to make right off the bat before I get started with the material is that no matter what, we have all been affected by this virus in some way. So whether we have personally had the virus, we know someone else who's had the virus in our family or someone that's close to us, we've all been affected to some degree. And it's important to remember that everyone who experiences a disaster or crisis is always affected in some way. And stress and anxiety are normal emotions that come up during these times. And it's important to remember that these reactions are normal in the face of abnormal situations. And it's important to remember that after an initial stress response, most people will actually cope effectively and grow stronger. So that's just something to think about and kind of keep in the back of your mind for, when things get difficult and stressful. It's important to remember that on the other end of this, most people will actually grow stronger. This is just a nice little statement here about hope. So never underestimate the power of hope. Hope fuels us with the energy and courage to go forward. So aside from stress and anxiety, it's important for us to remember that there are a wide range of emotions that we may feel in addition to stress and anxiety. And the thing that I want you all to remember here is that it's important to just identify the emotions that you're feeling and allow yourself to experience them without any judgment. So you're not going to be hard on yourself because you're feeling angry or frustrated or whatever. Some of you might be thinking, well, I don't know if I can identify the emotions I'm feeling sometimes. And that's okay. It's just important at that point to identify you're not feeling yourself and not to judge yourself. Just try to use your coping skills to try to move past that. And if you find that you're struggling and your coping skills really aren't cutting it, it might be helpful at that point to reach out for more help. And you can use your EAP as a resource at this point. And there's actually a link here that's included where you can find your EAP coordinator. So maintaining well-being is an important part of our everyday life, but now more than ever, it's very important. So I just want to talk about a couple of things that help us maintain some, sense of well-being. And the first thing is maintaining a regular schedule. So we don't have much control right now over what's going on with the virus, but there are some things that we do have control over. And even though they might seem small, they can make a big difference in our day and help us to have some sense of normalcy in our life. So a few things you can do are shower, get dressed, eat at your meal times. One thing I want to touch on that's important for well-being is just, we may be caring for a loved one, whether we're at home and we're caring for a loved one, like physically in person, or at the office and we're fielding calls and we're getting emails and things like that from a loved one that we're caring for at home. It's important to remember that we are going to be interrupted. So expect these interruptions and just accept them without any judgment, and just know that recognize that your workday may not be conventional because of all this, and that's okay. One thing that is built into our work days are breaks. And for whatever reason, sometimes we take these breaks, sometimes we don't. Now more than ever, it's very important to take these breaks during our workday and do something enjoyable. And it doesn't have to be an extraordinary amount of time. It could just be a minute or two. As much time as you have, you can dedicate to this. So some things you might want to do are chair yoga, maybe some deep breathing exercises, walking. You might want to call a colleague, a friend, or even a family member. But just remember, as this next slide says, in all of this, just breathe. So that brings me to a little exercise that I want to do with all of you. It's a breathing exercise video. And if you're having trouble with the actual video here on the slide, or if it doesn't come through on your computer for whatever reason, I'm going to talk through the video. When I start the video, I want you to remember when I'm telling you to breathe in and out, you're going to be breathing in through your nose and out of your mouth. And when you breathe in through your nose, I want you to make sure that your belly rises, not your chest. So we want that breath to go all the way down into our belly. So I'm going to start the video now. And hopefully I don't have any technical difficulties, although it looks like I might be having some. Okay, so it looks like this video is not playing for whatever reason. So what I'm going to do with you, I'm going to just do this breathing exercise with you. So I would like all of you to take a deep breath in through your nose, hold it, and breathe out. Deep breath in through your nose, hold it, and breathe out. Again, in through your nose and hold, and breathe out. In through your nose and hold. Breathe out through your mouth. And one last time. Breathe in through your nose, hold, and breathe out through your mouth. So that's just an exercise that you can do however many times a day that you would like, if it's helpful for you. And as I said, the actual video is on the New York State OMH Facebook page. I'm sorry that it didn't play here, but it shows a nice image of these, it's like hexagons, I think, or boxes that kind of open up as you breathe in and then close when you breathe out. So another aspect that's very important for maintaining well-being is healthy eating and sleeping. So during times of stress and chaos, it's very easy for us to kind of just grab and go, right? Whatever we see, we kind of just grab and eat. One thing that might help us in this area is just preparing some healthy meals and snacks the night before so that we don't fall into any unhealthy habits during times of stress. We also want to maintain a regular sleep schedule. So even if you're working from home, you want to try to go to bed and wake up at the same time. We also might want to try engaging in some meditation before bed. This can really help us decompress from any added stress during times of uncertainty. And again, this does not have to be a long process. You can meditate for as little as 2 minutes if that's what you have. Another important area I want to touch on is media. So we really want to limit checking our media related to COVID-19 to 1 time per day and only look at areas of concern for you. So the town you or your family live or work in. This will really help, to keep us from getting overwhelmed. And practicing gratitude is very important every day, but again, now more than ever, it's very important. So each day you might want to compose just a short list of things that you're grateful for. This seems like a very benign task, but it is a very good task to get our minds off of the stress and anxiety, even if it's just for a couple of minutes. We also might want to consider making a positivity mural in a place that's highly visible to family or coworkers. So other family or staff members can go by the mural. They can write something on there once a day or as many times as they want. And this can actually help to remind us of things that we're grateful for that maybe we overlooked during these times of stress. So in general, we want to always be kind to ourselves during this time and to others. We don't want to overwhelm ourselves. We want to remember that we are probably not capable of maintaining balance in every area of our life right now, and that's okay. And we also want to be kind to others. So we want to remember that people deal with stress in very different ways. So we want to try not to take other people's behaviors or ways of managing personally right now. So I just included another nice little image here that's positive. So in general, a sense of community does help decrease stress. So we're kind of in a catch-22 because we're being told to socially distance from our community, but that does not mean that we have to stop communicating. So continue to communicate with your loved ones, your friends, despite having to socially distance from them. You can use online platforms if possible to maintain contact. You can call friends and loved ones on a regular basis. You can write them. Whatever mode you want to use to contact them is great. Just remember when you're talking with others that you want to talk about things other than the crisis. So this will help you maintain some sense of normalcy in your life. You don't want to only focus on that. So up until now, I talked a lot about, our own emotions and managing those emotions, but the reality is a lot of us are caring for others, and we're also trying to manage their emotions. So I just want to go over a few key points here that may be helpful with regard to that. So we want to maintain open communication. So we want to be talking about how we're feeling. We want to be honest about it and open. We also want to create a safe space for others to process how they're feeling. And when they're doing this, we want to expect and allow for a difference of experience. Not everybody is going to be experiencing things the same way we are, and that's okay. Also remember that not everyone experiences the same emotion in the same way. So you may have an inability to focus or experience an inability to focus when you're feeling anxious, whereas a child may experience anxiety as a stomach ache. So it's just important to remember that there are some differences here in how people experience things. So this next slide, I want to talk about vicarious trauma. So you're probably asking, well, what is that? Vicarious trauma can happen as a result of working with individuals who have themselves experienced trauma. Well, how do we experience vicarious trauma? So it can come in the form of irritability, sleep disturbances, anxiety, and interpersonal difficulties, to name a few. And this is specific for Department of Labor employees. So you all may be experiencing vicarious trauma in more specific ways, such as feeling as though you cannot fix everything, feeling helpless, feeling emotionally drained, and feeling frustrated due to not having all the answers. And it's important to remember that vicarious trauma is different than general stress or burnout. So vicarious trauma actually results in more significant changes to a helper's life. So it can affect how they view their work, how they view their life, their environment, things like that. And you're probably at this point thinking, well, how do we help ourselves if we're in this situation? So you're going to try to keep discussions between colleagues focused, and even family and friends, focused on positive or neutral aspects of your life. Sharing traumatic events and conversation only continues to service the vicarious trauma. You also want to focus on aspects of work that you feel good about and share success stories throughout your day. You want to obtain supervision as needed, be kind to yourself as always, and take those breaks that I talked about earlier and do something enjoyable for yourself. Pause and take a breath. Recognize you're helping just by listening and being kind. As simple as that seems, it's a huge, huge support just to listen to someone. And also remember that the level of the caller's emotionality is not a gauge to the quality of your work. So try not to take their emotionality personal and make it seem like you're not doing your job. So I want to talk now about some considerations for managers, just in general, for well-being. So we want to always keep our staff informed. So set a regular meeting time for updates, and even if there are no updates, still meet with your staff in order to tell them that. Check in regularly, reach out to staff to ensure they're engaging in self-care, and thank your staff. Your words are very important. And as this next slide says, words can go where arms and hugs cannot. So grief. Managers always, deal with grief at some point with their employees, but they might be facing this issue a little bit more now than they have in the past. And the ways that grief could be popping up are, staff may be dealing with loss of a loved one, a lost connection. So as a manager, we just want to be mindful that productivity may be affected during these times and to just remain supportive and model that it's okay to grieve. It's also important for you as managers to touch base with other leadership staff because you can't offer support to anyone if you don't also have a support network. So make sure you have those connections and touch base with your supports as well. So with regard to vicarious trauma, you're going to want to hold staff meetings that focus on success stories at some point during the meeting. You're going to want to check in with staff and validate their experiences and just in general be open and non-judgmental. So this next slide is a couple of coping resources. So the first one is the New York State Emotional Support Helpline, and the phone number is listed here. They're open 7 days a week, or I should say available 7 days per week, 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. And then there's a YouTube link here that goes to OMH Commissioner Dr. Ann Sullivan's talk on managing anxiety during COVID-19. So check out the website and the video, and if you need the helpline, the phone number is here for you. So this next slide, DOL leadership is actually looking to change the workflow on the calls. So what I'm going to say to you, this little example I'm going to give you is actually approved language from the Department of Labor. So when taking an employment calls, you can actually offer the New York State Emotional Support Helpline as a resource. So for example, you might say something like this: before I end this call, I want to share that we are offering a connection for all callers to New York State's COVID-19 Emotional Support Helpline. Many people have found that talking to the helpline about the emotional impact of unemployment has been helpful. I can give you that number or transfer you to the line now if you are interested. The number is 1-844-863-9314. The helpline is open 7 days a week from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. So that wraps up this portion of the WebEx. I do hope that this information was useful for all of you, and that you, gained some insights into different aspects of kind of what's going on with, COVID-19 and how to maintain your well-being. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Kristen. I think that was a lot of really helpful, valuable, information, especially given the environment that we're all working, living, and experiencing at the moment. So I just want to ask if there are any questions out there, if you could chat them in at the moment. We do have plenty of time to address them. I know so far we haven't received any questions just yet, but I have to imagine there's some questions out there. So we'll give folks some time to chat in their questions. And just as a reminder, if you wouldn't mind, when you go to chat in your questions, selecting that little arrow that's pointing right down, if you could select all panelists to chat in your questions, that would be much appreciated. And then for those of you who may not have caught this right at the beginning, this webinar is being recorded, and the recording along with the slides are going to be shared with everyone who registered and joined. So if you are interested in sharing this material with some colleagues who are not able to join, or if you just want to revisit some of the information, I know that we weren't able, unfortunately, to play that wonderful breathing video, that exercise. So once you receive the slides, you'll be able to kind of directly view that as well. So please be sure to chat in your questions. We have some time reserved, so I'm just going to mute myself for a moment and see if any questions have come in. Okay, so we do have one question, and the question is about, I think this is coming from a parent actually. So this parent is wondering how to support their child in this stressful environment and situation. Is there anything that you might be able to offer to this parent who's asking?
Yeah, that's a great question. I just want to say hi, everybody. My name is Dr. Meese, and I'm going to be here with Dr. Haran answering some questions. That's a very good question. I know it can be hard. Everyone's kids are home now, out of school, everyone's home together. But I would suggest trying to keep some structure to the day for your kids. That can be helpful for them. Also, trying to find ways to keep them in contact with loved ones and friends from school in different ways possible. Maybe they can video chat with friends. Various ways they might still be able to stay in touch. And also, some of the same distress tolerance skills that we've been talking about, or Dr. Haran was talking about during the presentation, this might be a good opportunity, depending on your kid's age, to teach those to your kids as well. So doing some breathing exercises, maybe some distraction techniques when we're feeling distressed, and some guided imagery, general mindfulness exercises. That can be helpful to teach kids as well when dealing with stress right now.
Thank you, Dr. Meese. That's very helpful. Okay, so we've gotten a couple other questions. So I think one question is specifically, someone is wondering what DOL what plans DOL has to help its employees who might have experienced trauma in their own agency.
So it's Dr. Horan again. You know, we are not too sure about these plans. This is something that, you know, would have to be discussed with supervisors, or we can get back to this individual if we find any more information out after the webinar.
Sure. So this is one of those questions that we're sending back to the state. So for those who chat these in, any question that we can't answer, the state is going to, they'll receive the questions, and they'll receive your name so that they can follow up directly. Okay. All right. So our next question. All right, so this person is asking, this is a question that I sometimes ask, how do you articulate no and say no in order to protect yourself from, you know, assignments or workloads that become overwhelming, and people who might speak to staff in unfriendly and abusive tones? So I think this is about kind of putting up those protective barriers, how to say no, and how to support not only yourself from feeling overwhelmed with, you know, assignments or caseloads or workloads, but also how to support staff who are experiencing some real trauma at this point and might be really challenged by people who speak to them in abusive or unfriendly tones.
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think that, you know, just being open about your limits right now, when you're being asked to do assignments that you feel maybe are overwhelming, being open about how you're feeling, being open about what's already on your plate, and just being honest with your supervisor about what you feel you can handle right now. I feel like the best policy here is honesty. And then as far as people who speak to staff in abusive tones, you know, maybe having an open discussion with them if that's something that's possible. If not, you know, likely limiting your contact with them if you can. You know, sometimes we don't have to deal with certain staff beyond, you know, X, Y, and Z, right? So maybe not dealing with them more than you have to. I hope that answered the question.
I think it also just, you know, highlights that what people are experiencing now, there's so much, right? There's so much that people are managing already on their workload, but then there's the interpersonal part that's really challenging as well for everyone. So I think that's a great answer. I believe that was you, Dr. Horan.
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's all good. All good. So this person in particular is having, I'm going to try and summarize this a little bit. They're having a really hard time, it sounds like, managing on a day-to-day. It sounds like they're isolated, they're living alone, their kids are out of the house and living elsewhere, and they're trying to maintain a schedule and to walk, but they honestly feel very fragile on a daily basis. And, you know, sometimes just find themselves, you know, bursting into tears with everything that's going on. You know, what should they do? How should they, you know, manage? And do you have any tips or recommendations? And I also want to just say, you know, thank you to that person who chatted in that question, because I think it's quite honest and brave to, you know, share that I think a lot of people are experiencing that. And thank you for sharing that.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's probably really common right now. And to that person, I'd like you to know that the way you're feeling right now is completely normal. A lot of people are probably feeling the same way. A lot of, you know, feeling isolated right now. And it sounds like you're doing a really good job trying to do some self-care, going for walks, maintaining a schedule. Maybe there are even some additional ways you can fit in some more self-care. Just ways to take some time for yourself and keep reaching out to loved ones, even though if you're living alone, try to still stay connected to people. And I would also really encourage you to jot down the number we have here. This is for everybody, for the Emotional Support Helpline. because, you know, that's exactly what this is for, when people are really feeling overwhelmed by the current crisis and they just need a little bit of help and maybe some additional resources on how they can cope right now.
Mm-hmm. And if I could also just add this, I know we haven't mentioned this a ton, but I do think for those who are separated from family and loved ones during this time and unable to come into contact because of the nature of the pandemic, some things like FaceTime or Zoom calls, I know it can be hard to see people, but it does, I'll speak from my own personal experience. I haven't been able to see my family in months, and it has been really a moment of joy when I'm able to get on the FaceTime and see what my parents are cooking up in Buffalo while I'm here in Brooklyn for dinner, or just connect that way. So if you're not able to physically be with people, I do think some of the technology that's out there has allowed us to connect in ways that we might not have thought of originally, you know, to stay connected. But that's just one, I know I'm not the expert on this, but just from my personal experience, because I struggle with what this person shared as well, that I think that's been something that's helpful for me. All right.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. That's great.
Yes. I know, staying connected, it's tough. This is, okay, I'm going to move to our next question. So another person is sharing that they also, too, feel overwhelmed with the work and also just being concerned in general about, you know, the unknowns about COVID and contracting it. You know, are there any tips on how to deal with this feeling of being overwhelmed and the unknown? And that, you know, I think they found it helpful, like the idea of like making sure that there are breaks in this, you know, in the workday, but also they're concerned that there is so much going on. Will that ever impact their, you know, their the job performance? You know, trying to balance this all, but also trying to balance our health and our mental health, you know, any tips on that?
Yeah, it's a lot to balance right now. Everyone is balancing so much. And as, you know, Dr. Horan said earlier in the presentation, try to be kind to yourself, that we might not be accomplishing everything we normally do. We are all having even more responsibilities probably now than ever. So, you know, I would encourage you to try to compartmentalize work as much as you can. So keeping work at work and home at home. I know that can be hard, especially when people are working from home. But keeping that balance, I think, can help us maintain well-being a little bit better, and putting those boundaries on our work life. And also, you know, the worries about, you know, actually contracting the virus, I believe that was part of it as well. That's also certainly real. And, you know, it's easy for all of us to feel out of control when things like this are going on. But, you know, I think we can manage our anxiety a little bit better when we feel like we can control something. So the things that, you know, everyone is recommending now, you know, good hygiene, wearing masks when we're supposed to, those things, that can help us feel a little bit more in control. Like maybe you are doing your best, you know, to avoid contracting the virus, but these are certainly very real concerns. And again, I would just highlight the self-care that we've been talking about throughout this presentation.
Absolutely. Okay, so another question from another participant. So it sounds like, do you have any suggestions for additional ways to break unhealthy habits now that the current situation and these habits might have been in place for almost 3 months?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, right, we have to be easy on ourselves, right? Like, don't be too tough on yourself about, you know, trying to all of a sudden do all this all at once, right? So just go slow. You know, set small goals for yourself. And if you don't meet those goals, like, don't beat yourself up either. So try to just go slow, be non-judgmental, and take it day by day.
And then when you meet those goals, do you celebrate extra? if you're being easy on yourself.
Why not?
Yes. All right. Okay. All right. So next question. I find this actually really helpful also. What's the difference, would you say, between a normal amount of stress, because we know stress is part of living, but that other type of stress that needs like attention or treatment, kind of like that pushes us over the edge, I would say. What's the difference between those two types of stress?
Well, I think that, instead of focusing on the type of stress, it might be more beneficial to focus on how it's affecting you. So, because everybody has different limits, right, and different thresholds for this kind of stuff. So I think that if you are feeling very overwhelmed or just, you're just not feeling yourself and you feel like you need a little help with that, that's a good time to reach out for help. So no amount of stress is too big or too small to reach out for help. So it all depends on how you feel and how you feel like you're able to manage that and cope.
Great. I think you started to actually address this in the actual PowerPoint, Dr. Haran, but someone's asking about, how to motivate oneself to keep healthy while working stressful, like in a stressful situation from home, and, not wanting to eat too much while working from home and having access to your kitchen on a regular basis. Tips for how to do that.
Yeah, so that's a hard one. Maybe putting up a baby gate. No, I'm just kidding. But, I think just maybe like, what you can do, and I'm kind of like thinking as I'm talking, if you took a lunch bag or something to work on a regular basis, fill up your lunch bag. And if it has like items that need to be refrigerated, obviously you're going to keep your lunch bag in the refrigerator, but fill up your lunch bag. And then what you would normally eat for your day at work, you have in your lunch bag. And then when you're done with that, unless you're really starving or something else is going on, you don't eat anything else aside from your lunch and your snacks that are in there. I don't know if that's a good suggestion, but.
I like that suggestion. I also think staying hydrated is really important too, in terms of like the scheme of things, like staying healthy and balanced at home. I've found that just regularly making sure I have a glass of water next to my at-home workstation that's regularly filled is really important for my well-being. So I don't know, I would share that tip as well.
Good point. Yeah, good tip.
Okay, next question. We've gotten a ton of questions, so I just want to thank everybody who keeps chatting them in. This is much appreciated. Let's see here. This is, I think folks are now, what are we, 3.5 months into this environment, and people are starting to wonder, are we expected to think this is normal? Is this period of crisis and the stress and anxiety associated with the pandemic going to be considered the new normal going forward? And how should we think about that and be mindful of that?
Yeah, that's a good question, and that's tough to think about, right? Because everyone's been at a heightened level of stress for several months now. And that's why, again, I probably sound like a broken record, but just to really encourage taking care of yourself during this time, because, having heightened levels of stress like that for a long time isn't very good for our health either. So just doing whatever you can, anything that's been working for you to take care of yourself. And certainly, hopefully, this, won't always be our new normal going forward. But for now, just keep doing whatever you can to try to get through it and take care of yourself and those around you,
And I'm sorry about the pauses. I'm typing some of the responses so that we can capture this. Okay, so someone's asking, and this is for the person who asked this question, I just want to say that this is not the only time I've heard this, that some folks find it challenging, the exercises like yoga, meditation, mindfulness, that just doesn't necessarily work for everybody. What else might you recommend in terms of like a wellness exercise or routine that this person who doesn't seem to like yoga or meditation, what they could try out?
Yeah, and I think that's why definitely you have to try to find, what works for you. And Dr. Horan, please jump in if you have any suggestions as well. But, it could even be reading. Maybe for you, that's really calming. That really helps. Going for a walk, some kind of exercise. Every once in a while, watching some kind of TV that helps you just distract and you can focus in on that. And just really being mindful in any kind of tasks you engage in. That helps you, stay in the present, not get too caught up with the world around us, unknowns of the future. And really, I think you can practice mindfulness in any task that you're doing. But yeah, it is going to be really, really personal to everybody what helps them.
I agree. Yeah.
Okay. So this person is wondering, looking forward to the future when we are returning to work, how to adjust to this new normal and be respectful and kind in the new 6 feet distanced world. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Can you repeat that, Meg? I'm sorry.
Sure. No, it's okay. So they're wondering if you have any suggestions on the return to the new normal working environment as far as being respectful and kind in the new 6 feet social distanced working world. So I think they're referring to the fact that we have to keep our distance.
Yeah.
Right.
I think
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Dr. Meese. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay. I was just thinking about, some of the things you were saying earlier in the presentation about still staying connected to others. So even if that's, maybe you have a colleague that you used to enjoy lunch together, and maybe you feel like you can't do that. Maybe you could call them on the phone, even if they're just a few offices away, and still try to do some of those normal things that you used to do, and just try to still stay connected in unique ways. I know it's hard when we're going back and it's not quite normal because we're staying away from people, but maybe you can still try to stay connected with colleagues through email or phone calls in place of times when you used to gather together.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I was also thinking too, some people, I've already kind of noticed this just kind of in my own life where people might seem to be more lax, as the day goes on, or as the days go on, I should say. Like recently I ran an errand and there was a man who was like standing right up behind me, even though like the floor clearly said they stand here to stay 6 feet apart. And, he was talking to me and he was telling me actually how he had the virus a few weeks ago. And I was like, oh my goodness. And you're like right up on top of me. So I was just trying to be respectful and, answer the questions he was asking me, but then also like quickly turning around and trying to like maintain my distance. I'm also thinking of people that want to shake your hand, so that might come up a lot, right? So it's really easy to just kind of deflect and just say, oh, yeah, I'm just doing elbow bumps now for a while, or things like that. It's definitely going to be trying to kind of get used to all of this because everyone has their different ways of handling all of this, and everyone, some people are more strict with the social distancing, some people are more lax. So it's like it's kind of going to be a trial and error to see what we feel comfortable with and with our language and how we deal with people.
Agreed. I know that I found it challenging when I'm out and, out of my apartment and I'm in a mask. And so I've had to learn to, speak up, speak louder, articulate, and also just, I think we're used to being able to read people's faces, right? And that's even challenging, not being able to see everyone's full facial reaction. So just kind of getting used to that. But yeah, I appreciated all those recommendations. Okay, so someone is now asking any tips on how to cope with loneliness while working from home. So this is someone who's working from home, dealing with loneliness and the routine of not being around colleagues in the office.
Yeah, so that's great. And I think, speaking to this person who wrote this in, you're not alone in this. so many people are feeling this way. And I think just kind of going back to some of the things that I mentioned in the presentation, calling friends and family, doing things like, staying in touch with whoever you normally would be in touch with, or that you're yearning for that connection from, whether it be a phone call, a letter, FaceTime, whatever you have access to, try to really do those types of things to help with the loneliness. And, even going for a walk, depending on where, people live, if they even go for a walk in their neighborhood, they're socially distancing, but they're seeing other people. And sometimes even just seeing and being around other people, from a distance, obviously, is comforting.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Okay, so this is someone who's really struggling with, I guess, mandated overtime and all of the extra time they've been working, just because there's been so much going on. And now it's getting all of this extra time that they've worked is really getting overwhelming. So they're wondering if you have any recommendations, just because everything is so critical. It's all critical in nature in terms of how to best deal with time management.
Time management in what regard?
Yeah, that's a good question. Let's see here.
So just in general, I guess I'll just kind of give a general recommendation. So just in general, when you're going through your day, just put the most important tasks first, right? And try to get those done. So now I understand, though, for these calls, everything is probably important, right? So your whole workday, your whole list might be number one.
Right.
And in that case, just have an open discussion. I don't mean to sound like a broken record here, but have an open discussion with your supervisors about how you're feeling and what's going on. And then, do your best to get through your list. And, you can only do your best.
So I think I have more context. I just got a little bit more info. It does sound like some of the folks that have joined us today have a mandatory, it sounds like 15 hours of mandatory overtime per week that's been going on since the beginning of May. So I think that's what they were referring to, that, they've got their regular work hours and then there's 15 additional hours. And that's what I think. So I think you were answering that, but that was the extra context, that they're, just wondering how to manage all of this, just given that there's so much that they're really taking on at this point. And they're not sure that, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, Meg. I was going to say, a lot of that overtime is definitely, without a doubt, I can say this without knowing people personally, it's spilling into your personal life. So, none of us are used to working 15 hours of mandatory overtime if that's not part of our job on a normal basis. So just remembering, what I said in the presentation about, you're not going to be able to maintain balance in most areas of your life right now, most likely. So, just know that that's going to happen. People might be, lacking in, maybe cleaning up their house or doing things like that they normally do. And so just don't beat yourself up about things like that. Just kind of take it as it comes and just know that, it's okay that you're not able to do all the things that you're normally able to do.
Yeah. Okay. So the next question someone asked is, how can they deal with anger issues due to the crisis? It feels like grief.
Okay, so that's a good question. I would say that, heavily rely on your coping skills, your connections, communicate with people, talk to people about how you feel. And if you're still feeling this way and none of that is really helping, I would say to reach out to the EAPs to see if you can, if they can offer you any additional support or point you in the right direction. But really focusing on your well-being.
Okay. All right, our next question. So we have two questions that are somewhat similar, and the question is about the fear of going back to work. and the fear of being exposed to people, you know, if their office hasn't really communicated, you know, what measures the office has been taking in terms of cleaning and safety and what will be done, and how can people who have these very legitimate concerns make them known, just so people are understanding where they're coming from as we move forward in this future that we're heading towards.
Yeah, and I think those are reasonable questions to want to have answered. You know, as it is scary, and probably a lot of people are having fear now as we start reopening and going back to work. I would, you know, reach out to your supervisor if possible and share some of these concerns with them. And hopefully if they don't have the answers on what's being done at your workplace, they can, you know, find the answers for you just to try to help you, you know, put you at ease a little bit about going back and what measures are being taken. And also just, you know, encouraging you to take it into your own hands as much as you can. So doing the things we were talking about earlier, like following all the recommendations that are going around in our state right now, and just trying to do your part to keep yourself safe and know that, all right, I can't control everyone around me, but I know that I'm doing the best I can to keep myself safe. And, you know, like I said, just being open with your supervisor about these fears as well.
Absolutely. Okay, we have one question. Let's see here. So I think this is just getting back to, this question is what we spoke about earlier, just a few questions ago, about, you know, the challenge to balance working from home and all of these additional hours that are being asked of these staff members with these mandatory overtime hours, even on holidays. And really, it sounds like, you know, this can create a stressful and challenging and negative environment to work in when you're already being asked to do stressful things, and then there's more is being asked of you. So, you know, is there any way, anything else that you, and someone might have chatted this question in as you were answering the other one, so just, you know, our timing on these things is sometimes off a little bit, but I'm just wondering if there's anything else that, you know, either of our wonderful experts can kind of add to kind of manage this stress in this stressful environment while balancing, you know, our personal lives as well.
Yeah, so, you know, I think that, and again, I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but I think that everything does come back to, you know, self-care and just realizing that this time right now, it's unprecedented, right? So there are so many things going on that are brand new for us that we don't really know how to navigate through. And just sometimes even acknowledging, you know what, I don't even know how to handle the situation right now. I'm just going to do my best, and I'm going to focus on the most important things to me. So, you know, something as simple as, you know, sitting with your family for a couple of minutes each night and just talking about, you know, how much you care for each other and, you know, the support that you're there to offer each other and the positive things that happened in your day are helpful. They can be helpful. But just realizing, again, that you're not going to have this balance that you're used to having, and just recognizing and accepting that it is going to cause you some kind of distress, without a doubt. And that, you know, each day you'll learn more and you'll just do better for yourself in terms of, you know, taking care of yourself and doing things that are enjoyable for you.
Thank you.
And I want to mention, too, you know, because I keep saying that, and people are probably thinking, well, I don't have time to do something enjoyable. And you really just need even 2 minutes. You know, 2 minutes, you can put down your computer or whatever you're doing, and literally you can look out the window, look at the birds, look at, you know, the landscaping, whatever brings you peace and calmness. You can sit there and just do you breathing for 2 minutes. You know, it does not have to be a 10, 20-minute, half an hour, hour-long thing.
I think
that's
Dr.
a
Horan,
good point that even, oh, sorry.
Nope, go right ahead. Go right ahead.
No, I just wanted to echo that because I think that's a good point that it probably sounds really hard to fit into your life. But even small things like that, just taking a few moments and doing something enjoyable, I think can really make a big impact. And, just to start somewhere.
Absolutely. I think on our last webinar together, Dr. Horan, I shared that at the beginning of this, I personally had to find a routine that would work for me, and that included taking 2 minutes every morning and writing down something I was grateful for, like a little gratitude journal. And sometimes that was my neighbors that would play loud music in the afternoon that would give me extra energy. And sometimes it was, that I was able to get delicious groceries delivered. It was simple things, but I think like what you're sharing is you have to find the simple things that we might not have, I'm not going to say that we might have taken for granted, that's a little too strong, but that I just might not have considered before because, there with so much being out of our control in these scenarios, that it's nice to think of the things that surround us on a regular basis that I might have not observed or appreciated before. So I really like that suggestion.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's great. I'm glad that it's useful for you.
It's nice to revisit too.
Yeah,
to remind myself.
Right.
Yes. Okay. So here's we have about time for 1 to 2 more questions. So here's one. I know we still have some questions coming in. How do we support employees who have lost family members due to COVID-19?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. Go ahead, Dr. Meese.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, a lot of the things we've talked about in supporting just everyone around you, I think can still be applicable here, and just validating their feelings, whatever they're feeling, let them, allow for them to experience those emotions. And maybe there are practical ways you can offer to help them with things, and just, trying to be really non-judgmental and validating about whatever they've been feeling related to that. And understanding that everyone, grieves differently.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, thank you. I'm just scanning to see. So just to give some also, we've received a lot of comments as well, and I think a lot of people are very grateful to both of our wonderful experts for kind of talking through and just processing a lot of the questions that people are very much really struggling with or just kind of dealing with on a daily basis, whether that's kind of the balance of work at home, thinking about returning to home, how to support colleagues, being lonely. I think everyone's just very much appreciated everything that you've shared and offered some support on. So I think with that, I am going to ask if there's anything else our presenters want to share before we conclude today. No?
I just wanted to add, okay. I think, just to thank everyone for all the questions. I think, like Meg was saying earlier, it's really brave to, put yourself out there and ask all these questions, and really just taking the time to engage in this webinar today is self-care, taking some time to think about how you can take care of yourself. So I just, thank everyone for participating, and, hopefully it was useful.
Thank you. Well, thank you everyone who joined. Like I said, we are going to share this recording and the slides, so you'll be able to revisit everything. And I want to thank our presenters, and I hope everyone, takes good care and stays well as much as we all can in these really unprecedented times. So thank you again for joining us today.